Hey everyone, Mr. Harvey here. Let's continue our lecture. We are on chapter 16, ladies and gentlemen, and today we are going to be talking about art. Now, really important, ladies and gentlemen, to remember, art is a really important theme within AP Euro and definitely can show up on the AP exam. So remember, ladies and gentlemen, we have talked about art this entire year, starting with, remember, the Italian Renaissance, the Northern Renaissance, Mannerism. We've talked about the Baroque movement during the Catholic Counter-Reformation, the Baroque movement during the Age of Absolutism, Rococo, Neoclassicism, Romanticism, and today we're going to be talking about the art. And today is the last lecture that we're going to be talking about art within AP Euro, but this is going to be the art of the late 1800s and early 1900s. Now, a quick note, ladies and gentlemen, with those artistic movements that I just noted, if you're having a little bit of trouble kind of keeping track of all the art that we've talked to, go through your notes, ladies and gentlemen, and make kind of like a chronology, maybe a timeline that with each artistic movement. Write down the Renaissance, the multiple Renaissance movements, Baroque, et cetera, and maybe for each artistic movement, ladies and gentlemen, put down some of the important themes, maybe some of the important artists, and then maybe some of the important artistic pieces for each time period, okay? That might just be able to help you kind of keep track of all the art that we have talked and simplify all the art that we have talked about this entire year. But today we're going to be focusing on the late 1800s and early 1900s and multiple artistic movements during this time. And we're going to start with realism and naturalism within literature. And this art, in this literature, ladies and gentlemen, was really interesting because of a couple things. Number one was how scientific it was and how sciencey it was. There was a lot of scientific elements and themes within this the realism and naturalism that we're going to be seeing in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And that makes sense, ladies and gentlemen, because during this time, late 1800s, early 1900s, there is a huge explosion of science, right? We just talked about Charles Darwin in the previous lectures of chapter 16, Darwinism, natural selection, but there's a lot of other scientific innovations, advancements going on during this time. You have Einstein with his theory of relativity. There's a lot going on when it comes to science, and so science is very much going to be prevalent within the European intellectual sphere. And we're going to see writers incorporate some of that science within their writing. Also, we're going to see some really important themes regarding kind of what's going on during this time, late 1800s, early 1900s, in European society in their writing. We're going to see a kind of a negative portrayal of the bourgeoisie within a lot of these works, a negative portrayal of the middle class within these works. It's going to really showcase some of the harsh realities of life for some of the different groups. Some of the writers that we're going to be talking about and that really embody this movement, like Dickens, George Eliot, de Balzac, are going to incorporate elements of industrialization, some of the social happenings during this time, the social inequities, themes of materialism. Eliot's really gonna be very pessimistic, and he's gonna, in the kind of the same notion as Rousseau, really portray society as perpetuating evil and society kind of corrupting humans. Very similar to what Rousseau was talking about, if y'all remember in our Enlightenment lecture about Rousseau talking about the noble savage and the notion that civilization corrupts. Eliot's kind of doing the same thing, but we're seeing multiple, really two important themes within realism and naturalism. Is one, the science, objectivity, observation, empiricism, specificity, but also that the kind of the portrayal of life during this time, and really a negative portrayal of some of these happenings, industrialization, the social inequity, and whatnot. A couple important writers within realism and naturalism are Flaubert and Zola. Flaubert is very much known for Madame Bovary. This is considered one of the first true realist texts ever written. This was a work that describes this colorless and kind of hapless search of love by a woman. This is kind of a work that really portrayed life without any heroism, purpose, or civility. Zola It was very much probably one of the most famous of the realist and naturalist movement, and he argued, in a huge staple of his literature, ladies and gentlemen, was how the scientific elements within his writing. And he argued, he could write a novel as a scientist wrote a laboratory experiment. In his novels, there's tons of scientific objectivity, empiricism, observation, a lot of scientific elements within his writing. But also, kind of the second part that I've talked about that really embodies the realist and naturalist literary movement is some of the harsh realities of life that Zola is going to talk about, and some of the negative aspects of society that Zola is going to be talking about. He's going to talk about very difficult subjects like alcoholism, prostitution, adultery, labor strife, and these are topics typically not seen in literature, not seen kind of in the mainstream. But Zola is going to say just because they're negative, and this is really where he's coming from, just because they're negative and they're not, happy in kind of the status quo aspects of life, just because they're not positive, doesn't mean they're not important and they don't happen. Okay, and so he's really going to be, talking about some really difficult subjects and topics that are really going on in European society during this time. A couple more important realist and naturalist writers are Ibsen and Shaw. And Ibsen really critiqued and really tried to kind of take away this romanticized version and idealized version of the middle class, and the idea that the middle class were perfect and they had the perfect life. And in some of his works, like The Doll's House and In Ghosts, he goes after them. In Doll's House, he talks about this woman leaving her husband and leaving him because he's very narrow-minded and oppressive. In Ghosts, Ibsen talks about a woman dealing with her son suffering from syphilis, inherited from the father. So, Ibsen is really going after this idea of the respectability, the romanticized vision of the middle class, and illustrating more of a dark side, and illustrating more of a holistic view of the middle class. And Shaw defended Ibsen, but Ibsen, Shaw, Dickens, Eliot, Zola, these writers believed that it was their duty to portray reality, even if there were parts of reality that were difficult for humans to face and difficult for them to understand. And they refused to, be influenced by public opinion. If the public, didn't like this or didn't accept this, they still believe that, just because it wasn't very popular amongst the public and it wasn't entertaining or whatnot, it was still important for them to talk about these stories and talk about the truth. And they hope to destroy illusions and these romanticized visions of civilization and these idealized visions of how society is, and compel the public to face reality, that there are positives, but there's also negatives. And there is a picture of Zola. All right. Now, we're also going to see a modernist movement within literature during this time. And modernism is not just going to be within literature, but other forms of art that I will be talking about later on within this lecture. But modernism was very critical of the middle class. But what was important about modernism, and the main theme within it, is it wanted to kind of challenge the status quo, challenge norms, challenge conventional forms of art, challenge conventional traditional ways of thinking. Now, within that same kind of framework, modernism isn't just going to be this idea of challenging the status quo, challenging conventional norms, isn't just going to be seen in art, but also in economics. And I wanted to quickly talk about Keynesian economics, even though this is a lecture about art, because this is going to be this idea of challenging the norm economically is going to be really important. And I want to talk about John Maynard Keynes for a quick second, because we're going to see some of Keynesian economics be applied to the Great Depression later, and I'm going to be referring to Keynesian economics. So I kind of just want to introduce it really quickly. But John Maynard Keynes is going to kind of come up with this radical idea that deficit spending, that governments accumulating debt and spending more money that they have, can actually be a good thing. Traditional economic thought, that's kind of the opposite of Keynesian economics, is the notion that debt is bad and that governments should not spend more money than they have. John Maynard Keynes says, look, I get that, but if there's a depression going on and the government cannot, get out of it, then actually John Maynard Keynes argues this, that there is a way for a government to really kind of kickstart the economy. And he argues that governments can spend their way out of a depression by running these high deficits that kind of facilitate employment and the production of goods. What I mean by that is, and to break down what Keynesian economics is and what John Maynard Keynes is saying, is suppose a lot of people are out of work and there's, businesses are closing. Well, John Maynard Keynes says, well, if the government suddenly, invests in these huge projects, like such as building roads or building a military or building bridges, housing or whatnot, that the government can employ people to work and, build all these things, and people get a paycheck. And if people get a paycheck, then they have money. If all of a sudden a lot of people start having money, then those people can buy stuff. And if they're buying stuff, then businesses are doing better. And if businesses are doing better, then they can start hiring people. And so it really creates kind of a positive cycle within the economy that can kind of help it get on its feet and kind of kickstart it into positive growth. And that's kind of what he's saying. And the governments are borrowing all this money to kind of pay for all these things and pay for the salaries and pay for all these projects. But in the long run, he says that debt that they accumulate will eventually go away with all the prosperity that can be gained. So just really quickly want to talk about some new ideas, challenging kind of the conventional ideas when it comes to economics. But let's talk about modernism when it comes to art. And there's some really famous modernist writers during this time. One is Virginia Woolf, and what she's known for, ladies and gentlemen, is her detail, her observation. She really is going to challenge the norm when it comes to detail in writing and really kind of push the boundary for that. She's going to notice details that others omitted and really portray rich detail within her writing. Another is James Joyce, and he was very famous because what he did was he wanted to, he kind of comes up with this this notion of the stream of consciousness. And what he wanted to do was write what thinking really sounds like in the human mind and portray that within his writing. He wanted to write about the internal thought process and what language sounds like in our minds, and showcase the difference of how language sounds in our minds versus how language sounds when we're speaking, because there is a difference. And so, James Joyce, Virginia Woolf, really pushing the boundary, really challenging conventional forms of writing, breaking with tradition, right? Trying new things. And when I think about modernism, ladies and gentlemen, it really reminds me of the Renaissance, right? New ideas, trying new things. If we remember that, with perspective and the chiaroscuro, the sfumato, right? All those new ideas, very similar with modernism, trying new things, kind of challenging the status quo, pushing the boundary. Let's talk about when it comes to art, ladies and gentlemen. And one art form within modern art there's going to be a couple. We're going to talk about multiple art forms during this time, but one is Impressionism. And Impressionism, it begins in France, and it's really a reaction against the restrictions and conventions of the dominant art of this time, this dominant academic art. And there were really two main principles of Impressionism. One is modern life. We're going to see a lot of settings within Impressionism depicting modern life. Modern Paris, modern cities, social gatherings, right? It's going to be depicting this new modern life in the late 1800s, early 1900s that we're going to be seeing. But number two, the second kind of staple within Impressionism is these are paintings really focusing on a moment, trying to capture a certain thing in that specific moment. They're unfocused, they're full of color, but it's the moment. That fleeting moment. It's really kind of like taking a picture, right? Things change from moment to moment, all right? Second to second, minute to minute, hour to hour. And it's really, that's a huge part of Impressionism, is capturing the moment. And we're going to have multiple Impressionists that are very famous, but the one I want to focus on is Monet, all right? He's considered the father of French Impressionism, and here are some of his paintings. And you can see it's not really detailed, it's not really focused, but it's just capturing this moment, right? Capturing this moment, capturing these individuals in the moment, capturing this pond in the moment, really trying to capture the moment, all right? And here's a very famous multiple paintings of one thing, This was a cathedral in France. And Monet was just trying to capture this cathedral from moment to moment. And he painted, multiple paintings of this cathedral, but in the morning, mid-morning, afternoon, cloudy day, very sunny day, rainy day, okay? And the evening, at dusk, at night, and showing how the same thing can change from moment to moment, right? Same cathedral, and you can see, but just during different times of the day, different months, different weeks, capturing it from moment to moment. All right, another key theme, ladies and gentlemen, is modern life, and you can see it in some of these paintings. Look at this, a cafe, people are together. You can see their the clothing of this time. We can see the new city. Paris was used often as a background. We can see those modern roads, huge avenues, right? These modern new cities, modern life. And here's a really good example of that, ladies and gentlemen. We see this very interesting painting. We see this woman. She's a bartender, and this is a really interesting painting because this is a mirror. A mirror is behind her, so we can actually kind of see what she's looking at, and you can see this modern kind of celebration, this modern social gathering, right? Modern life, a really important part of Impressionism. Post-Impressionism, ladies and gentlemen, is really important as well. Post-Impressionism, ladies and gentlemen, was greatly influenced by the Impressionist artists, and it's more of a continuation of Impressionism than a reaction. And what's really important about this, I'm not going to kind of talk about all these details, but what's important about this, ladies and gentlemen, is that Post-Impressionism was very much focused on subjectivity, very much focused on style. All right, this is really important. A lot of the Post-Impressionists felt that Impressionism, was a little bit box people in. It was more, Impressionism was really sciencey and not very, very objective. Post-Impressionism is trying to bring out painters, artists, specific styles. Okay, their personal expression. All right, and we're gonna look at some of them, but some of the most famous are Seurat, Cezanne, Van Gogh, amazing. We're gonna see some incredible artwork with these post-impressionists, but very subjective, trying to bring their own unique style to their art. And here we can see with Seurat, and he is going to utilize a specific form of painting that's very much going to be in his style, which will be Pointillism, where he kind of just has like little dots, little points of dabs of pure color instead of mixing the art. And so this is a very famous painting, just an incredible painting, because these are all just little dots of color. You can see his own style, Post-Impressionism. Here's another picture. This is by Cezanne, and you can see his own little style. Very unique. This is his style. His style, very much an expression of his personality, his subjectivity within this. And here's another one, his own unique style. I think one of the best artists within Post-Impressionism that you can really see their style on display is Van Gogh. He has that unique style, that unique way of painting that you can definitely kind of just see within his art. Just take a look at his own self-portrait, but that unique style, that unique way of conveying, the hat, the skin, his beard, his facial hair, that unique style of Van Gogh. And you can see it's very similar if we go to the next picture, that unique style. You can see it here. That style, Post-Impressionism, the subjectivity, Van Gogh's own style within this. All right. Cubism, ladies and gentlemen. Cubism is a fascinating art form that's going to arise during the late 1800s, more so during the early 1900s. And Cubism, ladies and gentlemen, is really fascinating because instead of painting, as a window to the real world, we're just going to see painting for the purpose of painting. And artists are not necessarily going to be trying to paint real things, portraying something real. And they're going to reject the idea of a painting as, being a window into the real world. And they're going to reject perspective, make many of their pictures flat, integrate multiple perspectives. So this idea that you can look at a painting and someone else can look at it and see something different. There's going to be multiple things that may stand out to different people. But this is really just painting for the sake of painting. And Picasso and Georges Braque are two of our famous Cubists. And this is the very name of Cubism actually came from this painting by Braque. A critic said that this just looks like a little bunch of cubes, and he was actually trying to be really insulting. But this was just painting for the sake of painting, right? Not necessarily portraying something real, but painting for the sake of painting and integrating multiple perspectives into this. See what you think. Maybe pause the video and see what you see. All right, here's Picasso. Oops, sorry about that. But here's one of his paintings, and this is called A Bowl of Fruit, a violin, a bottle. And what do you see? What do you think? What stands out to you when you look at this painting? Now, remember, not necessarily trying to paint and give this window to the real world, but painting for the sake of painting. All right. Another one by Braque. And he says, when we created Cubism, we had no intention of creating Cubism, but of expressing what was inside us. So see what you think when you see this. What stands out to you? What stands out to you? All right, we'll stop here for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. And we will continue in the next lecture talking about Nietzsche.